to Kansas, gateway to Oz. Under the rainbow, this is where it was. Hollyhocks and red ripe tomatoes, hand-churned homemade ice cream. Let me tell you, Kansas is more than tornadoes. It's the best part of Dorothy's dream.
Today on Around Kansas, join us for a story about World War I and the Spanish influenza. Then join us for a story about upland birds and their population across the state. And we'll have a poem from Ron Wilson and end with a look at the pumpkin and its relation to the holidays. Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Your stem cells, your health, your life. Well, hello again. I'm Frank, and out there in western Kansas, that's Deb. And the two of us do a show called Around Kansas. That's this show. And it's a show about people, places, and things that make Kansas a great place to work, live, play, and come visit. If you've never visited Kansas, be sure you do, because there is a lot to offer here. Everybody thinks, oh, it's just flat and arid. No, it's not. It has a lot of interesting things. So if you've never visited, come visit, even in the fall and winter. Okay. Well, here we are on the 24th of October, and we've had our first snow. Wasn't that exciting? I mean, hello. Now, I was reminded before we started taping this show that back in August I was talking about the Farmer's Almanac, and the Farmer's Almanac said it would be a very snowy winter. And guess what? They are right again. I mean, the Farmer's Almanac, for some reason, is incredibly accurate. And, of course, it's observations of nature and, of course, a history going back many years that they make the predictions of what might happen in a particular year. Anyway, so far they've been right. Good grief, having snow on the 15th of October. Well, anyway, it'll be a fun time, huh? Okay, so we're a week away from Halloween, and that is becoming more and more a lot of people's favorite holiday. Of course, it always used to be for the kids. Oh boy, let's go out and trick or treat and all of that. But it has increasingly become a time for adults. I mean, there have been already many parties and celebrations of Halloween at the zoos, Boo at the Zoo and all kinds of things here in Topeka and Manhattan and Salina. And there are many more to come. So Halloween has really become something. I mean, people really go to elaborate lengths for makeup to become a zombie or whatever. And of course, there are haunted houses and haunted woods, and it's just a really, really fun time. And so it's not just one night anymore. This has been going on for, since October started. So anyway, if you're participating in all that, hope you have a really, really good time. I mean, it's also the time for apple cider, and my favorite cider is from Reeves Apple Farm, or Fruit Farm, which is just east of Topeka. In fact, in our refrigerator here, we have an entire gallon of their apple cider, and their apple donuts are fantastic. I'm not doing this as a commercial. It's just something that people can participate in each year. Anyway, October, a fun time. We've had snow. Halloween's coming, and guess what? Deb has some interesting stories today. Let's see. Upland birds, she's going to talk about those. And a review of the flu outbreak of World War I. It did start here in the state of Kansas, and a couple other things that she'll be talking about. So anyway, we'll get to that after you see this.
To see this show and past episodes of Ag AM in Kansas, go online to agaminkansas.com.
Hi, I'm Kim Mandarin with Hardy Insurance. I'm here to help you with all of your farm and ranch needs. When it comes to protecting your operation and your family, you need a name you can trust at a price you can afford. Call me today or visit hardyaviationins.com.
Fort Wallace was the fightingest fort in the West. Fossils, Indians, soldiers, scouts, wagons, trails, pioneers, stories. Discover the story of Fort Wallace and the people who served here, the people who fought here, the people who settled here. Wallace County, where the past is present.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
The U.S. declared war on the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, Turkey, in April 1917. Within a year and a half, 3 million Americans were under arms and 1 million saw duty overseas. About 80,000 Kansans enlisted, most of them in the 35th, the 42nd, the 89th, and the 92nd Infantry Divisions. Camp Funston at Fort Riley served as a major training center for World War I troops. Many soldiers from the Midwest and West were sent to Funston to train in modern war tactics. A career Army officer with a distinguished record of service, Major General Leonard Wood, took command of the training center at Camp Funston in 1917. Most American troops arrived in France in the spring of 1918. Their first major action came in the bloody Meuse-Argonne campaign, which broke the German resistance. The 89th, or Middle West Division, was composed of troops from Kansas, Missouri, and Colorado. Salina native George Robb was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for heroism displayed during the Meuse-Argonne action of September 1918. One other Kansan, Irwin R. Bleckley of Wichita, was posthumously awarded this high honor. James Harbord of Manhattan rose to the rank of Major General during the First World War. He served as Chief of Staff for the American Expeditionary Forces, commanded the 2nd Division in the field during the summer offensive of 1918. On the home front, people contributed to the war effort in many different ways. Citizens began purchasing war bonds and growing victory gardens. Kansas farm production was vital to the war effort. With thousands of men leaving the farm to serve in the armed forces, farm labor often came from non-traditional sources. Women began stepping into men's working roles as the men went off to fight. Women became employed in factories, began running farms, and even delivering the mail. These positions had been closed to women prior to the start of the war. Whether on the home front or the front lines, the flu was just as feared as the enemy. The outbreak of 1918 was named the Spanish influenza. By October of 1918, 24 countries had reported flu cases, and many had several deaths. The Spanish flu was different from other strains of the flu because of how quickly it passed from person to person, and the main victims of the Spanish flu were aged from 20 to 40, typically healthy individuals. In fall 1918, the disease made its way back to Kansas, and government officials were quick to take action against the spread of the disease. Dr. Samuel Crumbine, Secretary of the State Board of Health, began a campaign to keep the public in Kansas well aware and educated about the flu and what people could do to prevent it. Despite these measures, there were hundreds of deaths reported in Kansas, and eventually health officers were forced to close individual cities by closing schools, public gatherings, theaters, church services, and limiting the number of people in a store at a time. The government officials in Kansas hoped to limit the outbreak and prevent more people from becoming sick. It is estimated that the disease killed between 16 and 30 million people worldwide, with nearly 700,000 deaths in the United States alone. War, disease, rationing, it's no wonder that the nation roared into the 1920s in an effort to put these dark times behind them.
With nearly 100 years of broadcasting excellence, Ren Radio is now live on the internet playing hit songs of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Join Jack Diamond, Mac Collins, Les Glenn, Frankie C., Antonio Barber, Wings Callahan, and the real Don Steele for some of the best music ever recorded. Hear it at rendigitalmedia.com or get the Ren Oldies Radio app in Play Store or App Store and tell Alexa, good times and great oldies on Ren Internet Radio.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
I'm Scott Thellman, and this is Juniper Hill Farms. Even though my parents weren't farmers, they bought this beautiful farm north of Lawrence in 1999. In 2010, I started growing vegetables on this land. Today, Juniper Hill Farm sells produce to wholesalers, grocers, and restaurants, and is focused on growing high-quality food that everyone can afford. Watch my story and the stories of other young Kansas food producers at kansaslivingmagazine.com/meetafarmer.
This segment brought to you by the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center in Oakley.
Kansas reported the second highest pheasant harvest among states in 2017. And Kansas will still have one of the best pheasant populations in the country this fall. Pheasant hunting in Kansas should be fair to locally good this year. Pheasant densities had been slowly recovering from 2013 to 2016, with a few areas reaching relatively high densities. A late 2017 spring blizzard, remember that one, folks, in western Kansas, reduced nesting success and resulted in a decline in the 2018 pheasant crow survey. Winter precipitation was limited this year too, resulting in short wheat and concern for nesting prospects. Heavy spring and summer showers greatly improved vegetative cover for nesting though, but also limited nest success. Conditions shifted peak pheasant hatch later into June and July. While wheat harvest was delayed, which typically benefits the pheasant production, the short wheat limited its usefulness for nesting. Roadside counts indicate a below average pheasant population this year. The combination of heavy cover and the later peak hatch may have reduced the number of detectable birds on the counts, but generally survey conditions were ideal. The best areas will likely be in the northern half of the Kansas pheasant range, with areas of high densities also found in central and far southwestern regions. Quail. Last fall's Kansas bobwhite quail harvest was the highest recorded in the country, finishing just above Texas. And while hunting isn't expected to be quite as good in 2018, Kansas will still have one of the best quail populations in the country. Precipitation patterns observed over the last 5 years altered vegetation, increasing both the quality and quantity of habitat, allowing for a modern quail boom. While total harvest has remained well below average due to lower hunter participation, the average daily bag has remained at the best levels observed in 20 years. The bobwhite whistle survey in 2018 showed only a slight decline compared to the 2017's highest values ever recorded from this survey, which began in 1997. Dry weather in the east and wet weather in the west provided optimism for high production and another banner year. Early reports indicated lots of birds along roadsides and throughout wheat fields during harvest. However, observations on the statewide roadside survey were significantly down this year, with only the Osage Cuestas showing improvement. Densities in the easternmost regions are not as high, but all regional indices remain near or above their respective long-term averages. The best opportunities will again be found in the central regions, extending east into the Flint Hills. The greater prairie chicken. Kansas is home to greater and lesser prairie chickens. Greater prairie chickens are found primarily in the tallgrass and mixed grass prairies that occur in the eastern third and northern half of the state. The Southwest Prairie Chicken Unit, where lesser prairie chickens are found, will remain closed to hunting this year. Hunting opportunities will be best in the northern high plains and Smoky Hill regions this fall, where populations have been increasing or stable. Check out the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism for more information. Welcome to Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in Oakley, Kansas on I-70 at exit 76. I-70, after all, is America's Main Street, and we're right here on Main Street for you. Now that I'm an Oakley resident, I still come in almost every day, and I sit and listen to the conversations of the people around me. You know, the guys who are talking about the big elk they just bagged, or the folks who are taking their kid to college for the first time. People just traveling up and down the highway. Real people, just like you and me. And they find just what I find here, real people to serve them. There's history, there's scenery. We hope you'll stop and see us soon. Welcome to Oakley. Highways 40, 83, and I-70 come together right here in Oakley. Roads that lead to businesses, to magnificent rock formations, to scenic vistas, to places where legends were made. Roads that lead us home. Discover Oakley, the gateway to Western Kansas.
I had this horse. It was a good horse, except when the wind was blowing above 30 miles an hour. The wind was blowing about 35, 40, and I saddled him up, rode him out to the end of the lane, and I thought, well, he's doing pretty good. And about 6 jumps later, I was laying on the ground and thinking, boy, my shoulders sure hurt. I kept waiting, and it didn't get better, and so I went to orthopedic surgeon, and that showed that I had torn rotator cuff. He said, well, I have to do surgery. I thought, I farm and ranch by myself. This is not going to work out very well. I'd been sleeping in my recliner for about 2.5 years because it hurt too much to sleep in bed on my side. I'd heard about Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center on the radio. Gotten down there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 11:30 the procedure was all over. They just took some fat out of my side here and spun that down for about 45 minutes and then injected it in my shoulders, and I was on my way. It's something you don't hear about, but I thought it was worth a try, and I'm really pleased. It's really worked out well for me.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Howdy folks, I'm Ron Wilson, Poet Laureate. Some years ago I was invited to a statewide festival, and it was mostly urban people, and I felt I needed to do a reminder of the great cowboy history of our state, Kansas. Kansas is a cowboy state. It's in our legacy. Kansas blazed a trail throughout Western history. It all started with the Native American Indian, as you know, who roamed the open prairie and hunted buffalo. Then new explorers charted the wilderness, braving harsh conditions. Coronado, Lewis and Clark, and John C. Fremont's expeditions. U.S. cavalry soldiers came out west to build forts. Fort Scott, Hayes, Leavenworth, Larned, and Riley, of course. Kansas was a key crossroads of the trails of the day to Oregon, California, and down to Santa Fe. When Texas Longhorns needed to be shipped east by rail, the cowboys drove those herds up the Big Chisholm Trail. It was the toughest cattle drive those cowboys had ever seen, up to Dodge City, Caldwell, Wichita, Ellsworth, and Abilene. The townsfolk knew they'd better have things all battened down, because some cowboys sure went wild when they finally got to town. They'd gamble and shoot and drink up their fill, and a few left their graves up on top of Boot Hill. But like everything else, those times went through change. Homesteaders built fence where there was open range. Brave pioneers came west to make a homestead as their perch, and built the institutions of the home, the school, the church. Now the spirit of the cowboy in our state is living still, from the feed yards out west to the rolling Flint Hills. In the heart of a Kansan, the cowboy spirit lives on, and the values our people will still draw upon. They work hard and play hard, are honest and free, values that matter to you and to me. It's part of the history that makes Kansas great, so we're thankful Kansas is a cowboy state.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well on their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but yet we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we're glad to answer it and work with you.
Are your cows practical or profitable? If you want them to be both, come to the Dale Banks Angus Bull Sale Saturday, November 17th near Eureka, Kansas, selling 140 yearling and coming 2-year-olds who have spent their days on the rugged pastures of the Flint Hills. For 114 years, the Perriers have been focused on providing hard-working, balanced trait bulls for progressive cattlemen nationwide. Make plans to join us November 17th or pre-register to bid online. For more information and to view our catalog, visit www.dalebanks.com.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
No fruit or vegetable captures the imagination like the pumpkin. Cinderella used it as a coach. Peter Pumpkin Eater kept his wife inside its shell. Charlie Brown fell asleep awaiting the arrival of the Great One. It scares us, it entertains us, it feeds us. My favorite scene from all the Harry Potter movies is Hagrid's pumpkin patch. Aren't those pumpkins wonderful? Don't they conjure images of coaches and dwelling places for little beings? There is a wonderful mystery to a pumpkin. Now comes the season for pumpkin pie, pumpkin soup, pumpkin bread, pumpkin ale, pumpkin truffle. Oh my! My friend Bryce Benedict used to grow hops to make his own pumpkin ale, which he generously shared a couple of years ago. It made the best cheddar ale soup I have ever tasted. The pumpkin flavor was just the extra touch to make it interesting. The website, All About Pumpkins, lists dozens of varieties and gives us a little history. Pumpkins and squash are believed to have originated in the ancient Americas. These early pumpkins were not the traditional round, orange, upright jack-o'-lantern fruit we think of today when you hear the word pumpkin. They were a crooked-necked variety which stored well. Archaeologists have determined that variations of squash and pumpkins were cultivated along river and creek banks along with sunflowers and beans. This took place long before the emergence of maize, corn. After maize was introduced, ancient farmers learned to grow squash with maize and beans using the Three Sisters tradition. According to Pumpkin Patches and More, the tradition of carving a jack-o'-lantern from the pumpkin began in Scotland and Ireland. Well, of course, except they used turnips, since pumpkins were native to the New World. Can you imagine homes decked out in turnips or being scared to your stocking feet by a candle inside a turnip? Well, my friend Ian Hall, token Scotsman, verifies the tale and adds that the turnips were pretty hard to carve. And now, dear viewers, I'm off to the pumpkin patch.
Well, it'll be Happy Halloween next week, but between now and then, Deb and I will see you somewhere around Kansas.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.
We're the best part of Dorothy Street.